Benin and Niger have a long history of political, economic, and cultural exchanges. Several issues, like security concerns, regional integration initiatives, and economic cooperation, have influenced their bilateral relations in recent years. This is why in today's video, we are going to be discussing an important topic. The military leaders of Niger have escalated the Benin Border Spat, blocking Chinese oil exports. We will tell you why this is happening, the consequences of this, and some other reasons why there has been tension between the two West African countries in recent months. We will also be shedding more light on the US troops who have been asked to leave Niger. But before we continue, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the New Tourist channel so you never miss out on any videos concerning this topic. In the most recent turn of events, Ali Mohamed Lamin Zein, the Prime Minister of Niger, stated that trade agreements between Niamey's Chinese partners and Benin were broken by the latter's embargo on its oil shipments. Zein's statement, which intensified the conflict even more, stated that Niger's border with Benin could not be fully reopened due to security concerns. In retaliation, Cotonou declared that it would only yield if Niamey restored access to its borders for Beninese goods and restored diplomatic ties. The blockage puts Niger's $400 million agreement to begin selling crude oil to China in jeopardy. Bear in mind that Benin's capital port is connected to Niger's Agadim oil field via a 2,000-kilometer Chinese-built pipeline. However, Zein said the blockade violated about a dozen accords signed by Benin, Niger, and the Chinese company PetroChina. He went further to say that one of the oil export accords stipulated that Benin could not unilaterally modify or limit the agreements in any way possible without the consent of the other parties. This means that the country agreed not to take any decision that would stop the flow of Niger's crude oil to the international market. It is important to note that relations between the two nations have been strained since the coup in Niger in July 2023, which resulted in the imposition of harsh sanctions by the West African regional body ECOWAS for over 6 months. This led Benin and the West African regional bloc to impose strict sanctions on Niger, including border closures, in a bid to force the military to hand power back to the elected government. The Beninese president in December, under ECOWAS provisions, announced the lifting of the suspension of imports of goods transiting to Niger via the autonomous port of Cotonou. Although things eased in February, Niger has still declined to allow products from Benin to cross its land border again. Bear in mind that Benin was anticipated to collect transit duties and tax revenues in proportion to the amount of Nigerian oil that spilled at St. Craig amidst tense diplomatic relations. The platform where the 1,980 km pipeline that links the Agadim oil fields landings is where the projection is located. Note that according to a 2019 National Petroleum Plan, Niger was to become a major regional oil producer with the completion of the pipeline that connects Koulel in Niger to the port of Same in Benin. Following the completion of the 2,000 km long Chinese-built pipeline through Benin, production was set to rise significantly to 110,000 barrels daily. But after the democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum was overthrown by a military coup in July of last year, that optimism was tempered and is now uncertain. The dispute is seen as undermining the project and affecting relations between two countries that were close trade partners before the coup in Niger. Benin would lose about $7 million daily from oil transit fees that Niger would have paid. Most of Niger's imports and exports passed through Benin before the coup, but this is now happening through Togo. Prime Minister Zein said that Niger would not comply with Benin's request to fully reopen its border. So, what will happen next is unclear. As all this is going on, the military leaders of Niger are attempting to reach a deal with the US to withdraw most of the less than 1,000 US troops from the country. But in the meantime, a broad withdrawal order has been issued to facilitate the withdrawal of most of the US forces. Although some US officials have begun to discuss the withdrawal's details with Niger, the Pentagon has not yet held more in-depth discussions with the country, which will primarily center on the logistics of the pullout. It was mentioned that a US delegation was to travel to Niger over the weekend to discuss how it will be carried out. A deal to permit US military flights into and out of Niger is one of the matters defense officials need to settle in their discussions with the administration. Foreign militaries have not been able to fly over Niger since the coup in July. Instead, they have to individually request permission to fly over the country. However, a U.S. military official explained that the departure would happen gradually over several months. The dismantling of anything that is not required for life, safety, or security is currently taking place, and it is being prepared for export. The footprint will gradually decrease as employees and equipment that are no longer considered essential are relocated elsewhere. The hope of having a small number of troops remaining in the country is largely wishful thinking at this point, despite the conversations still ongoing, as Niger's government has been clear it wants U.S. forces out. The unstable situation in Niger is only the most recent indication of the continent of Africa becoming more unstable. Over the past several years, a series of military takeovers have threatened American power in the region and provided Russia with an opening to expand its influence. Although the U.S. military has a minimal presence in the continent and is mostly concentrated on counterterrorism operations, authorities also see Africa as being crucial to Russia and the U.S. worldwide struggle for influence. The military leaders of Niger terminated its military accord with the United States in March, and Russian troops have been stationed in several camps within the same facility that houses U.S. troops. In an anonymous statement, a top U.S. defense official claimed that Russian personnel were using a different hangar at Airbase 101, which is close to Diori Hamani International Airport in the capital city of Niamey, Niger, rather than interacting with American soldiers. Russian military action brings American and Russian forces closer together at a time when their military and political competition over the situation in Ukraine is growing more intense. Russia is attempting to reinforce its ties with African countries by portraying itself as a friendlier nation with no colonial past in the region. For instance, Mali has emerged as one of Russia's closest African friends in recent years, thanks to the deployment of the Wagner Group mercenary force there to combat jihadist insurgents. Russia has said that ties with the United States are low due to American financial and military support for Ukraine's defense against Russian forces on the invaders' territory. The U.S. presence on the continent is already unstable due to Niger's expulsion of U.S. personnel and Chad's threat to revoke their status of forces agreement. The loss of U.S. forces in Chad may be a sign of things to come for security and U.S. influence on the continent, even though it is a less evident military defeat. The U.S. finds it challenging to directly compete with Russia since it is ready to provide some of the military leaders who have seized control of governments in Africa. Russia may provide significantly less restrictive security support than the United States in the battle against terrorism, including the provision of weaponry. Growing unrest may make a swath of African countries unsafe for U.S. business travel, but may be safe for Russian travel. That could have dramatic security implications beyond Africa, particularly if it imperils safe U.S. access to the Mediterranean, where the U.S. military has been operating since Hamas invaded Israel in October. We can see that Niger has been going through a lot these past months, and now Benin's blockade of its oil exports. Can we say the coup has led to all these tensions? Trade agreements between the two countries are obviously broken by Benin's continuous blockage of Niger's oil exports. This action has serious economic repercussions for Niger, whose economy is largely dependent on oil exports, in addition to undermining the spirit of cooperation and mutual gain. The blockade hinders both countries' growth and advancement in addition to obstructing the flow of essential resources. To quickly and amicably resolve this economic issue, diplomatic consultations between Benin and Niger are essential. Both nations will have to fortify their bilateral ties and promote mutual trust and collaboration in the region by respecting fair trade principles and keeping their word. The international community must keep a careful eye on the situation and support a peaceful conclusion. The breaking of commercial agreements erodes the legitimacy of long-standing trade frameworks and creates a risky precedent. The international community can be crucial in settling this uprising conflict and guaranteeing the stability and prosperity of the area by pressing both sides to be accountable and encouraging communication. Long-term economic diversification, decreasing reliance on a single product, and improving trading links with other nations are critical goals for Benin and Niger. This will support sustainable development and economic resilience, in addition to lessening the effects of trade disputes. Both countries must hold talks, make a quick decision, and prioritize fair trade and cooperation. They will also promote prosperity, stability, and economic growth for their countries, as well as the area at large by doing this. Do you think Benin preventing its landlocked neighbor from using its port to export its first crude oil will lead to a greater conflict between the two countries? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the new tourist channel too, so you get notified whenever we upload interesting videos like this. Thanks for watching and see you in our next video.